The wedding ring nearly slipped from Adanna's trembling fingers as her phone buzzed again and again inside her shaking hand. "Your father is crashing." "The hospital," nurse cried through the speaker. "If payment is not completed in the next 10 minutes, we cannot continue the procedure." Tears blurred Adanna's vision, yet there she stood, dressed in white, breathless, terrified inside a candlelit chapel she had never seen before, about to marry a man whose face she barely knew. Then the chapel doors opened. Her groom entered in silence, tall, unreadable, powerful. And when he reached the altar, he leaned close enough for only her to hear, and whispered in a voice that made her blood freeze. "Don't look so frightened, Adanna. I've waited a very long time to meet the daughter of Obina. If you were forced to marry a stranger to save someone you love, would you do it? Or would you let fate decide before we continue? Tell me in the comments, what country are you watching from and what time is it there right now? And if you love emotional, dramatic stories filled with twists and powerful life lessons, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter." Before fear dragged her into silk candles and a stranger's name, Adanna's life had been small enough to fit inside one tired neighborhood street. Every morning before the sky fully brightened over Enugu, she woke to the sound of metal buckets scraping concrete, women calling to one another, and minibuses coughing smoke into the road. Their compound was old, cracked, and always dusty. The roof leaked during heavy rain. The power disappeared whenever it pleased. But inside the narrow two-room home she shared with her father, there had once been laughter. There had once been dignity. There had once been a future. Now there were medicine bottles lined like soldiers across the windowsill. Now there were unpaid bills folded beneath a chipped sugar tin. Now there was the slow, humiliating sound of sickness eating a good man alive. Obina had not always looked like that. He had once been broad-shouldered and quick with his hands, the kind of man who could fix a broken chair, repair a radio, and calm an angry room with only a few words. People used to greet him with respect. Shopkeepers stood when he entered. Neighbors asked his advice. Children ran to him because he always had a story or a mango tucked away in his pocket. Adanna still remembered him carrying her on his shoulders through the market when she was little, pointing out fabrics and spices as if he were introducing her to a kingdom. He would tell her, "A poor man can survive many things, but once he sells his honesty, he becomes poorer than dust." At the time, she had laughed and asked for roasted ground nuts. Years later, that sentence would become a knife twisting inside her chest. The illness came quietly at first. A cough that stayed too long. Fatigue. Then pain in his side. Then blood. By the time they finally reached a hospital willing to take him seriously, the doctors stopped using gentle words. They spoke in low tones. They asked for scans, deposits, more tests, more money. The numbers kept growing like a curse. Adanna sold her mother's last gold earrings first, then the sewing machine, then the small generator. She took shifts at a roadside food stall in the morning, cleaned offices in the evening, and spent half the night braiding hair under a bare bulb for women too impatient to wait until morning. She learned how to smile when customers insulted her prices. She learned how to swallow hunger with water. She learned that exhaustion could become so normal it no longer felt like suffering. It just felt like life. But no amount of work was enough. Each time she scraped together one hospital payment, another bill appeared. Each time she thought they had bought one more week, a doctor spoke to her as if money itself were oxygen, and her father would drown without it. Still, she kept moving. Because Obinna, even while coughing into cloth, would look at her with shame and say, "Nem enough. Let me go." And every time she would kneel by his bed and answer the same way. No. That word became her religion. No, he would not die because they were poor. No, she would not bury the only parent she had left. No, the world would not crush them without a fight. One afternoon, the landlord came while Obinna was sleeping. He stood in the doorway with his belly pressing against his faded shirt, and his impatience filling the room before he even spoke. 2 months' rent. Empty promises. Final warning. He looked past Adanna and stared openly at the medicine bottles, then clicked his tongue as if sickness itself were offensive. "I am not a charity," he said. Adanna lowered her voice so her father would not hear. "Please, just give me 1 more week." He laughed. Not loudly. Worse. Quietly. 1 more week, he repeated. "That is what poor people always say before they disappear in the night." Her face burned, but she did not beg again. Pride was expensive, yet she still had a little left. She only folded her hands together and said, "You will have your money." When he left, she pressed her fist against her mouth until the anger passed. It did not pass. That evening she walked to the pharmacy with the last cash in her wrapper and returned with half the medication the doctor had prescribed. Half. She placed the packet on the table and stared at it as if shame had become something physical, something that could be weighed and touched. Adanna noticed immediately. "You bought less." She forced a smile. The pharmacist changed the dosage. He studied her face for a long moment. Even weak, even pale, he could still read her too easily. "Adanna." She looked away. "Who have you asked?" "No one. Who have you begged? No one," she said again, sharper this time. He coughed and winced. "Good. Keep it that way." The words snapped something inside her. "Keep it that way," she repeated. "You think dignity will pay for blood tests? You think honesty will buy oxygen? You think these people care that you were a good man?" His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with pain. "Do not speak like that." "Why not?" Her voice trembled. "Because it's true." He tried to sit straighter. "There are things worse than poverty." She laughed once, bitter and broken. "Name one." Adanna fell silent. Then he turned his face toward the window, toward the dying evening light, and said quietly, "Living long enough to watch your child destroy herself trying to save you." The room went still. Adanna hated him for saying it. Adanna loved him for saying it. That was the cruelty of love. It never arrived alone. 3 days later, the hospital called before dawn. His condition had worsened. Internal bleeding. Emergency intervention. Immediate deposit required. Adanna did not even change properly. She threw a scarf over her braids, shoved her feet into cheap sandals, and ran. By the time she reached the hospital, sweat soaked her back and dust streaked the hem of her skirt. The corridor lights were too bright. The smell of bleach and sickness wrapped around her throat. A tired administrator slid a paper across the desk. "This must be cleared first." Adanna stared at the amount. For a second, her mind stopped. It was not money anymore. It was mockery. It was a number written by people who had never had to choose between medicine and rent. "There must be another way," she whispered. The administrator did not even pretend sympathy. "There is always another way. It depends on who is willing to pay." Adanna went from office to office until her feet ached. She called relatives who had stopped visiting years ago. One aunt did not answer. One uncle answered, listened, and then said, "Your father made his choices before hanging up." A cousin promised to see what he could do, which meant nothing. A woman from church sent prayers in a voice note. Prayers. As if heaven accepted audio messages in place of deposits. By noon, Adanna was sitting on a concrete bench outside the hospital, dizzy from heat and hunger, when a black car stopped near the gate. Not a taxi. Not a neighbor's car. This one moved like authority. A woman stepped out first. She was older, elegant, wrapped in deep blue fabric that looked too expensive for daylight. Her posture was straight, her expression calm in the way only powerful people could afford to be calm. A younger man in a suit opened an umbrella above her, though the sun was blazing. She walked directly toward Adanna. "Miss Adanna Obinna." It was not a question. Adanna stood slowly. Yes, the woman studied her face, as though comparing it to a memory. "I am Madam Ifeoma Nwosu," she said. "I believe your father is dying." The bluntness hit like a slap. Adanna's chin lifted. "If you came to mock me, you should leave." A faint smile touched the woman's lips. "If I wanted to mock you, child, I would not have worn silk to do it." The insult was so polished, it almost sounded kind. Adanna folded her arms around herself. "What do you want?" Madam Ifeoma did not answer immediately. She glanced toward the hospital building, then back at Adanna. "I know what your father needs. I know how much it will cost. I also know you do not have it." Adanna's stomach tightened. "How do you know my name?" "I know many things." That answer was worse than no answer. The younger man beside her opened a leather folder and removed a thin stack of papers. Not hospital forms, not charity documents, legal papers. Madam Ifeoma nodded toward them. "There is a solution." Adanna did not touch the papers. "What kind of solution?" "A marriage." The word did not make sense at first. Then it did. Adanna actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're insane." "Am I?" "Yes." Madam Ifeoma remained perfectly still. "A respectable ceremony. Immediate hospital payment. Your father receives the best care available. His debts are settled. Your housing situation improves." Adanna's voice turned cold. "And in exchange, you marry a man chosen for you." The world narrowed. No. Madam Ifeoma tilted her head slightly, as if she had expected resistance, but not outrage. "Think carefully before you answer. I said no." The older woman stepped closer. "For years your father protected something that did not belong to him. Because of that, many lives were damaged. You know almost nothing about the world your father once touched. But your name has now entered that world, whether you like it or not." Adanna's pulse stumbled. "What are you talking about?" "Not here." The younger man held out the papers again. Madam Ifeoma's voice dropped softer now, almost gentle. "Your father can still be saved, but not for long." At that exact moment, Adanna's phone rang. "Hospital," she answered with shaking fingers. Miss Obinna, the nurse, said urgently, "You need to come inside now. Your father is crashing again." Adanna looked at the papers, then at the woman, then at the hospital doors, and for the first time in her life, she understood what true desperation was. It was not hunger. It was not shame. It was the moment love cornered you and asked what part of your soul you were willing to sell. Adanna signed the papers with hands so numb she barely recognized them as her own. The pen trembled between her fingers while the hospital corridor blurred around her. Every sound became distant, the squeak of nurses' shoes, the ringing telephones, the coughing patients waiting on rusted benches. All of it faded beneath the pounding of her own heartbeat. Madam Ifeoma watched her without blinking. The moment the final signature touched paper, the elegant woman nodded once to the man beside her. "Transfer the funds immediately." He stepped away with his phone. "Just like that. Just like magic. Or perhaps like a devil closing a bargain?" Adanna swallowed hard. "My father first. I want proof he'll be treated." "You will have it," Madam Ifeoma replied calmly. "An ambulance is already transferring him to St. Bernadette Private Wing. The best doctors in the city will take over within the hour." Adanna froze. How did you arrange that so quickly?" Madam Ifeoma's lips curved faintly. "When one has power, child speed is rarely a problem." Something cold slid down Adanna's spine. She had just handed her life to people who moved too fast, knew too much, and spoke like kings. Before she could think further, 2 nurses rushed toward her. "Miss Obinna, we've received authorization. Your father is being transferred now. And for 1 weak, dizzy second, relief nearly broke her apart. It was real. Her father would live, but the price had already been paid. The wedding happened that same night. No family, no celebration, no joy. Only a private chapel lit with gold candles and white roses that smelled too sweet, almost sickening. Adanna wore a fitted white dress someone had chosen without asking her size. The material hugged her skin like borrowed wealth. Her hair was styled by silent women who never met her eyes. Diamonds were placed around her neck by hands that treated her like an object being prepared for display. She felt less like a bride than a sacrifice. Every mirror she passed showed a stranger staring back. When the doors opened and she stepped inside, only a handful of people sat in the pews. Wealthy faces, cold eyes, not guests' witnesses. Then she saw him. Her groom stood before the altar in black. Tall, broad-shouldered, still as stone. The candlelight traced sharp lines across his face. Dark skin defined jaw-piercing eyes that somehow seemed calm and dangerous at once. He looked younger than she expected, perhaps early 30s, but carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man used to being obeyed. He did not smile. He barely even looked at her. The officiant began speaking. Adanna heard none of it. Her ears rang so loudly she could barely breathe. Then came the vows, then the ring, then his whisper. Don't look so frightened, Adanna. I've waited a very long time to meet the daughter of Obinna. The words froze her blood. How did he know her father? Why say it like that? Why did it sound less like introduction and more like warning? Before she could ask, the ceremony ended. And just like that, she belonged to him. No celebration followed. No dancing. No dinner. Only silence. She was escorted into the back of a black luxury car while her new husband entered from the opposite side. The door shut between them and the world. For several minutes neither spoke. Adanna stared rigidly ahead, clutching the fabric of her dress until her knuckles hurt. Finally she forced herself to look at him. You know my father. He kept his eyes on the passing city lights outside. Yes. Her stomach tightened. How? That conversation is for another time. No. Her voice sharpened instantly. I married you. You owe me answers. His gaze turned to her then, and the sheer intensity of it stole the air from her lungs. I owe you nothing except what was promised, he said evenly. Your father's treatment, your safety, respect within my household. Beyond that, do not mistake this arrangement for intimacy. The words hit like ice water. Adanna stared at him, humiliated. So that was what she was. A transaction? A duty. Not a wife. Not even a partner. Just a woman purchased for purpose. She turned her face away, blinking back tears before he could see them. Good, she thought bitterly. Better this way. Better to remember exactly what this is. Still. His voice haunted her. Cold, yes, but not cruel. Controlled, measured, like someone constantly holding back more than he revealed. The gates of the estate opened after midnight. Adanna nearly gasped aloud. The mansion ahead did not look real. It rose behind tall iron gates and trimmed gardens like something from television. 3 stories of marble walls, glowing windows, balconies edged in gold fountains lit blue beneath moonlight. Servants lined the front entrance in uniforms, waiting. For him. For them. Her mouth went dry. You live here. Her husband stepped out without answering. A servant hurried to open Adanna's door. Welcome home, madam. The title made her flinch. Inside the mansion was worse, more overwhelming than outside. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead. Floors gleamed like mirrors beneath her feet. Paintings lined the walls in heavy gold frames. Every inch of the place screamed old money, inherited power, bloodline wealth. This was not rich. This was dynasty rich. A middle-aged housemaid hurried down the staircase and bowed her head to her husband. "Welcome back, young mares." She stopped abruptly. Her eyes flicked to Adanna, then to him. Fear flashed across her face. He gave her one sharp look. She lowered her head instantly. "Forgive me, sir." "Young Mas, what?" "Young master." Adanna stared, but before she could process it, another voice cut through the hall. "Well, so it's true." A tall woman descended the staircase, slowly draped in wine-colored silk and dripping diamonds. She was beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful, elegant and dangerous. Her eyes swept over Adanna with immediate disgust. "So this is the girl," she said. Adanna instinctively straightened. The woman looked her up and down. "You do look cheaper than I expected." Adanna's face burned. Her husband's voice sharpened instantly. "That's enough, Amara." So this was Amara. The woman laughed softly. "Is it? You disappear for years and return with a wife from the gutter, and I'm expected to applaud?" Adanna looked sharply at her husband. Disappear for years. Return. What did that mean? He stepped slightly in front of Adanna. "Watch your mouth." Amara's eyes widened faintly before narrowing. "My apologies. I forgot how protective you become over your toys." "Toys?" Adanna clenched her jaw so hard it hurt. But her husband said nothing more. He only took Adanna's wrist gently. "Come." He led her upstairs without another word. Her room was larger than their entire house. No larger than several houses. There was a king-sized bed, silk curtains, polished wood furniture, a private bathroom bigger than the clinic her father once visited, and fresh flowers beside the windows. Adanna stood frozen in the center of it. Her husband loosened his cufflinks calmly. "You'll stay here." She stared. "What about you? My room is across the hall." She blinked. "We're not sharing one, no." Relief and insult hit her at once. He noticed. His mouth twitched slightly, almost like amusement. "This arrangement may require marriage," he said, "but I do not force women into my bed, Adanna." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "I didn't think—" "You did." She folded her arms defensively. "Then stop talking like you can read my mind." He stepped closer. Too close. His voice dropped low. "You wear every thought on your face." Her breath caught. For one suspended second, the room changed. The tension between them sharpened into something different, something warmer, dangerous. Then he stepped back, and the moment shattered. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be difficult." "Why?" He paused at the door, then turned, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that resembled pain. "Because tomorrow," he said quietly, "you will learn exactly what kind of family you just married into." The door shut behind him. Adanna stood motionless, then slowly walked to the window. Below, servants crossed the grounds beneath moonlight, and near the fountain she spotted Amara speaking furiously to an older man in a grey suit. The man looked up toward the house, toward her window. His eyes narrowed. Then Adanna heard him say words that made her blood run cold. "After everything we did to bury him, that bastard Heir came back." Adanna's entire body went rigid. Heir, her husband, wasn't just rich, he wasn't just powerful. He was something far bigger than she had imagined. And suddenly, marrying a stranger felt like the least dangerous part of what she had done. Adanna did not sleep. How could she? She lay stiff beneath silk sheets, softer than anything she had ever touched, staring up at a ceiling painted with gold trim, while the words echoed in her skull again and again. That bastard Heir came back. Not businessman, not millionaire, Not employer. Heir. Whatever world she had married into was larger, darker, and more dangerous than she had imagined. By dawn, her eyes burned from sleeplessness, but fear kept her upright. She dressed in the modest clothes the maids had prepared for her, and stepped cautiously into the hallway, determined to find answers. The mansion was quieter in daylight, but no less intimidating. Sunlight spilled through towering windows onto marble floors polished so perfectly she could see her reflection in them. Servants moved in careful silence, every footstep measured, every glance lowered, and every single one of them stiffened when they saw her, not with warmth, with curiosity, with suspicion, as if she were some strange animal suddenly allowed inside the palace. She kept walking until she heard voices drifting from a nearby room. Male voices, low, tense. She slowed near the slightly opened study door. Inside stood her husband and 3 older men in expensive suits. The moment she saw him in daylight, something in her chest tightened. He no longer looked merely handsome. He looked commanding. Sharp black suit, broad shoulders, perfectly composed posture. He stood with his hands behind his back, while the older men faced him with expressions that were strangely cautious, almost submissive. One of them was speaking. "Sir, the board will not react well if you appear publicly yet." Her breath caught. So another man added nervously, "Many still believe your disappearance weakened your claim. If the family pushes back now," her husband cut him off. "Let them push." The room went silent. His voice was calm, not loud, yet somehow every man there looked smaller after he spoke. "I did not come back to ask permission for what belongs to me," he continued. "I came back to take it." Adanna's stomach flipped. Take what? What exactly belonged to him? Then the first man said carefully, "The late chairman's estate remains divided until the succession hearing. If your uncle contests," her husband stepped forward slowly. "My uncle can contest in hell." Adanna's breath stopped. Succession chairman estate. The realization crashed over her in pieces. This wasn't just family wealth. This was empire-level wealth. Corporate power. Inheritance war. And the man she had married was fighting to claim the top of it. Suddenly his strange calm, his coldness, the servant's fear, Amara's hatred, it all made sense. She stumbled back from the door before anyone noticed. Her heart hammered wildly. Who had she married? At breakfast she sat across from him in near silence. A table built for 20 held enough food to feed 50 fresh fruit pastries, eggs, grilled meats, juices in crystal pitchers. It was grotesque after years of rationing bread and rice. She barely touched anything. He noticed. "You should eat." Her eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" He calmly sipped his coffee. "That's a broad question. Stop doing that." "Doing what? Talking like every answer is a game?" Her voice dropped. "I heard enough this morning. I know you're not just rich." His hand paused. "Barely. But enough for her to notice." Then he set the cup down. "So you were listening. I deserve to know who I married." He studied her face for a long moment, then finally said, "My name is Zuberi Adeyemi." She frowned. "I know that much." "No," he said quietly. "You know the name. You do not know what it means." He leaned back. "My grandfather built the Adeyemi Group from nothing. Shipping, banking, oil, real estate, telecommunications. He built one of the largest business empires in West Africa." His expression hardened. "When he died, he left control to my father. When my father died, the succession should have passed to me." Adanna stared. But instead he said, "My mother died in what they called an accident. I disappeared shortly after. And certain people in this house believed I would never return." A chill slid through her body. "You disappeared." His jaw tightened. I was forced out. By who? His eyes darkened. Another conversation for another time. Adanna nearly slammed her hand on the table. No, no more another time. You brought me here. You made me your wife. You owe me the truth. He stared at her, and then for the first time he smiled. Not warmly, not mockingly, just faintly, as if impressed. Most people are too afraid to shout at me, he murmured. Well, most people didn't wake up married to a stranger who apparently owns half the country. That made his smile widen just slightly. But then it faded. I am the rightful heir to everything in this house, he said, and many people here would kill before allowing that to happen. Adanna went still. She searched his face, and realized he was not exaggerating. He meant it. Literally. Kill. Her fork slipped from her fingers onto the plate with a metallic clatter. He leaned forward. This is why you must listen carefully, Adanna. Stay close to me. Do not trust anyone in this house. Do not go anywhere alone after dark. And if anyone asks questions about your father... She froze. My father... He stopped speaking. Too late. Her eyes sharpened immediately. What does my father have to do with this? His expression shuttered. Nothing you need to concern yourself with yet. Her stomach dropped. Zuberi. He stood. Finish eating. And walked away. That evening, Adanna wandered into the east wing while trying to clear her head. She should not have. But curiosity had begun overpowering fear. At the end of a quiet corridor, she found a room with the door partly open. Inside, portraits lined the walls. Family portraits, old oil paintings, framed photographs. She stepped in slowly, and then stopped cold. One photograph showed a younger Zuberi standing beside a beautiful, elegant woman she assumed was his mother. And beside them stood her father, Obina, younger, healthier, smiling. Adanna gasped aloud. Her knees nearly buckled. No, her father knew them. He knew this family. He knew Zuberi's family. Her hands shook violently as she grabbed the frame. Why had he never told her? Why had he hidden this? What are you doing in here? The voice behind her made her scream. She spun. Amara stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes glittering. Oh, Amara purred. You found the old secrets room. Adanna's voice shook. Why is my father in this picture? Amara laughed softly. So he never told you? Told me what Amara stepped closer. That your precious father used to work for this family. Her smile sharpened. Until everything went wrong? Adanna's breathing became ragged. What went wrong? Amara leaned in close enough for her perfume to choke the air. Ask your husband why your father's name was whispered the night blood stained this family forever. Then she walked away, leaving Adanna frozen in terror. That night, Adanna stormed into Zuberi's study. He looked up from his desk in surprise. She threw the photo onto the wood. Tell me now. His face changed instantly. Gone was the calm. Gone was the mask. He stared at the photo with something almost like dread. You went into that room. Answer me, she screamed. Silence. Then slowly he stood. And his voice, when it came, was low, controlled, dangerously controlled. Your father was once my mother's most trusted advisor. Adanna's breath stopped. He worked for this family for years. Zuberi continued, until the night she died. Her vision blurred. No. And after her death, Zuberi said, staring straight into her shattered face, your father disappeared with something that could destroy everyone responsible. The room spun. Adanna stumbled backward. No, my father would never. He has been hiding the truth for 20 years. The words hit like bullets. She stared at him in horror. and suddenly understood. This marriage, this entire arrangement had never been random. Never. He had not chosen her by chance. He had chosen her because of her father, and the man she had started to trust had planned this from the very beginning. The air in Zubairi's study turned so heavy, Adanna could barely breathe. She stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, not the quiet, controlled man who had arranged doctors for her father, not the cold husband who slept across the hall, not even the powerful heir feared by everyone in the mansion, but the strategist, the man who had known exactly who she was before ever stepping into that chapel, the man who had chosen her, used her. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. So this was never about helping me. Zubairi's jaw tightened. Adanna, no. Her voice rose, trembling. Do not say my name like you care when you clearly planned this from the beginning. He moved toward her, but she stepped back instantly. The pain that crossed his face lasted only a second before his control returned. You are misunderstanding what happened. Then explain it. She shouted, tears burning her eyes. Explain why you targeted me. Explain why you married me. Explain why you dragged me into your family's war using my dying father as bait. His voice sharpened. Because your father is connected to the truth, and that gives you the right to manipulate me. Silence! That silence was answer enough. Her chest tightened so painfully she thought she might collapse. You used my desperation, she whispered. You watched me suffer and waited until I had no choice. That is not what happened. Then what happened? He stared at her, then spoke quietly. When I learned who you were, I intended only to get close enough to your father to find what he took. His eyes darkened. But by the time the hospital called, your father was dying. You were desperate, and the opportunity presented itself. Her stomach twisted violently. He was saying it plainly, without softness, without excuse, because to him the truth mattered more than her feelings. I hate you, she whispered. Something flickered in his expression. Pain. Real pain. But he did not argue. He simply nodded once. You may. She turned and ran from the room before he could see her break. The next morning, Adanna refused breakfast, refused to speak, refused to leave her room until a maid knocked softly and informed her that the family expected her downstairs for dinner that evening. What family? The full Adeyemi family, madame. Tonight's welcoming banquet was arranged weeks ago. Her stomach sank. Of course. A public display, a presentation. The poor girl paraded before wolves. She nearly refused. But pride stopped her. If they wanted to humiliate her, they would not get the pleasure of watching her hide. That evening, Adanna descended the grand staircase in a deep emerald gown chosen by the house staff. Her face was calm, but inside every nerve was shaking. The dining hall below looked like something from royalty. A table long enough for 30 guests stretched beneath crystal chandeliers, every place setting sparkling with gold-rimmed china and polished silverware. Powerful men and jeweled women sat around it in designer clothing and practiced smiles. Conversation stopped the moment she entered. Every eye turned, every eye judged. Zubairi stood at the far end of the table dressed in black, watching her descend. He offered his arm. She ignored it. A tiny flicker crossed his face before vanishing. Good, she thought bitterly. Let him feel embarrassed. They sat. The meal began. At first conversation remained falsely polite. Then the knives came out. So an older woman drawled from across the table, smiling too widely, how charming that Zubairi found love in the slums. Soft laughter rippled around the table. Adanna stiffened. Another woman added sweetly, Tell us, dear, what exactly did your family own before this miracle marriage? A kiosk. A goat. More laughter. Zubairi said nothing. Adanna felt heat rising into her cheeks. Amara leaned back in her chair, sipping wine. Please be kind. She probably still thinks caviar is soap. The entire table erupted. Adanna's fingers tightened around her fork until they hurt. Still, Zuberi said nothing. Her chest burned. So this was his protection. This was what all his warnings and commands amounted to, watching while they tore her apart. A silver-haired man near the head of the table spoke next, his tone silky. You must forgive our curiosity, child. We simply wonder what exactly inspired my nephew to marry so suddenly. His eyes slid over her body. Though I suppose some hungers require little explanation. Laughter again. Humiliation flooded her so hard she nearly stood to leave. But then something inside her hardened. No, no more. She slowly placed her fork down, then rose to her feet. The laughter quieted. She looked around the table, her voice calm and clear. My father taught me something before he got sick, she said. He taught me that people who talk the most about class usually have the least of it. The room froze. Several people blinked. Amara's smile vanished. Adanna kept going. You mock where I come from because I did not grow up with chandeliers and servants. Her gaze sharpened. But I would rather eat from cracked plates beside honest people than feast in gold beside cowards who hide cruelty behind manners. Complete silence. One woman gasped. A man nearly choked on his wine. Amara shot to her feet. How dare you, I'm not finished. Even Adanna surprised herself. Years of swallowed humiliation poured out. You think money makes you superior. You think poor people should bow when you insult them. But wealth without decency is just expensive ugliness. The silver-haired man's face darkened. Watch your tongue, girl. No, she snapped, trembling but standing tall. You watch yours. The table exploded in outrage. Voices rose. Amara shouted. Someone demanded security. And still Zuberi remained silent. Adanna's heart cracked. She looked directly at him. He just sat there, watching, observing, as if measuring her. She stared in disbelief, then turned and stormed from the room. She was halfway upstairs, tears blurring her vision when footsteps came behind her. Adanna! She spun. Zuberi! Fury exploded instantly. You let them humiliate me! His face hardened. Lower your voice. No, she shouted. You sat there while they mocked my father. My home, my entire life. I needed to see what you would do. Her breath stopped. What? He stepped closer. I needed to know if you were strong enough. The words hit like a slap. You tested me. In this family, weakness gets devoured. So you let them hurt me to test me. His jaw tightened. Yes. The world went still. Then Adanna slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the hallway. Both froze. Her hand trembled violently afterward. Neither moved. Neither breathed. Then Zuberi slowly turned his face back toward her. His cheek was red, his eyes dark. But he did not get angry. Instead, he looked at her with something almost like admiration. You passed, he murmured. Her mouth fell open. You are insane! She stormed away again, shaking with rage. The next morning, the house was unnaturally quiet, until screams erupted downstairs. Adanna rushed to the foyer. Servants were whispering frantically. Amara stood pale-faced, and one of the silver-haired men from dinner was shouting into his phone. What do you mean the accounts are frozen? Another yelled. 3 contracts cancelled overnight. Impossible! Adanna blinked in confusion. Then Zuberi descended the stairs, calmly adjusting his cufflinks. He looked at the panicked family members, then said coolly, Anyone who insults my wife insults me. The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. Zuberi's gaze swept across the room like a blade. I stayed silent last night because I wanted to know if she could survive your poison. His voice dropped lower. Now I know. He looked directly at the silver-haired man. Your company accounts were audited at dawn. Then at Amara. Your fashion subsidiary lost its investors 30 minutes ago. Then at everyone else. And if any of you ever disrespect her again... His eyes turned glacial. I will bury every one of you financially before sunset. Pure terror filled the room. Adanna stood frozen. Her heartbeat thundered. He had destroyed them. Overnight. Without raising his voice. Without warning. He turned toward her. And for the first time she saw it clearly. The reason everyone feared him. Not because he shouted, not because he threatened, but because when Zuberi chose to punish, he simply ruined lives. Then he walked toward her slowly, his voice softer now. I told you before, he said quietly, for only her ears. I do not force women into my bed. His eyes locked onto hers. But I will burn kingdoms for the woman carrying my name. And suddenly Adanna's anger collided violently with something much more dangerous, because despite everything, despite betrayal, manipulation, rage, her heart betrayed her. It skipped. Adanna hated that her heart reacted before her mind did. She hated that, after everything he had admitted after the manipulation, the lies, the cold calculation, one sentence from him still made her pulse stumble. I will burn kingdoms for the woman carrying my name. The words stayed with her all day like poison dipped in honey, because that was the problem with Zuberi. He was never simple. He could wound her in one breath and protect her in the next. He could manipulate her like a chess piece and then destroy powerful people for insulting her. He was not cruel enough to hate easily, not kind enough to trust safely. He was something worse, complicated, and complicated men ruined women faster than cruel ones ever could. 3 days passed in uneasy silence. Zuberi gave her space as if sensing she needed distance to process everything. He remained polite but restrained, never forcing conversation, never stepping too close. At meals he spoke only when necessary. At night she heard him pacing in his study, long after midnight, as if battles were constantly being fought behind closed doors. And every morning she visited her father. The private hospital wing where Adanna now stayed looked nothing like the public ward they had left behind. The floors gleamed. The sheets smelled fresh. The nurses spoke softly and smiled when they entered. Machines beeped steadily beside his bed, expensive and modern. But even with the better care, he looked frailer every day. The illness had hollowed his face and stolen the strength from his once powerful hands. Yet when he saw her, he still tried to smile. My daughter married rich, he joked weakly one afternoon. Maybe I should get sick more often. Adanna forced a smile, but pain tightened her throat. Don't joke like that. He studied her immediately. You're unhappy. No, I'm not. You were a terrible liar even as a child. She looked away. Obina's voice softened. Does he hurt you? No, she said quickly. Never. Then what is it? She hesitated. The truth pressed against her lips. But she could not tell him, not yet, not while he lay hooked to machines. Instead, she asked quietly, Papa, did you ever know the Adeyemi family? Everything changed. The color drained from his face so fast it frightened her. His body went rigid. Who told you that name? Her stomach dropped. So it was true. You knew them. Obina looked toward the door as if suddenly afraid someone might be listening. Then he grabbed her wrist weakly, but urgently. Listen to me carefully, Adanna. You must leave that house. Fear flashed through her. What you must leave now. Today. Before he doubled over, coughing violently. Nurses rushed in. Machines screamed. Adanna stumbled backward in terror as they worked over him, shouting orders, adjusting monitors, pushing medicine into IV lines. One nurse forced Adanna toward the door. You need to go outside. No, Papa. The door shut in her face. Adanna stood trembling in the hallway, breath-ragged tears burning. And in that moment she knew. Her father was terrified. Not uncomfortable, not ashamed. Terrified. Whatever connected him to Zubairi's family was worse than she had imagined. That night she searched. Not the mansion. Not yet. She started with the hospital. While her father slept under medication, she slipped quietly to the records office and used the receptionist's distraction to access the computer terminal. Her hand shook as she typed, Obinna Enwachukwu. Employment history. Nothing. No results. She frowned. Typed again. Nothing. Then searched broader Adeyemi Group former employees, thousands of names. No Obinna. No record. No trace. As if he had never existed there at all. Her skin prickled. That was impossible. If the old photograph was real, if Zubairi had told the truth, then someone had erased him. Not lost, not forgotten, erased. Her heart pounded harder. Then she noticed one tiny notation buried in archived personnel data. File deleted. Executive clearance only. Her mouth went dry. Someone powerful had scrubbed her father from history. She barely made it back to the mansion before midnight. And when she entered the main hall, Zubairi was waiting. He stood near the staircase in black slacks and rolled sleeves, arms crossed, face unreadable. You're late. Her pulse jumped. I visited my father. His eyes narrowed. And searched hospital databases while you were there. Her blood froze. How do you know that? He stepped closer. Because the hospital belongs to me. Of course it did. Of course. Stop spying on me. His voice sharpened instantly. Then stop sneaking around where dangerous people can see you. I needed answers, and I told you I would give them when the time is right. The time is right. Now, she snapped. My father nearly panicked to death just hearing your family's name. His records are deleted. Someone erased his past. What aren't you telling me? Zubairi stared at her for a long moment, then finally said, Come with me. He led her down a hallway she had never entered before, down a private staircase, past locked iron doors, to a hidden office deep beneath the mansion. Inside stood shelves of old files, photographs, boxes, and newspaper archives. A war room, a place built not for living, but investigating. Adanna turned slowly. What is this, my mother's archive? He walked to a cabinet and pulled out a thick file. For 20 years I have been collecting every scrap of truth they tried to bury. He handed her the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos, police reports, company memos, death certificates. Adanna's eyes widened as she flipped through them, and then she saw her father again. Younger, standing beside a stunning woman she recognized from the family portrait, Zubairi's mother, Adanna Adeyemi. She trusted him, Zubairi said quietly behind her, more than almost anyone. Adanna swallowed hard. Then what happened? His jaw clenched. One night my mother discovered someone inside the company was stealing millions, laundering money through fake contracts, selling assets illegally. His eyes darkened. She prepared evidence, planned to expose them. Adanna's breath caught, but before she could, his voice lowered dangerously. She died in what they called a car accident. Silence. The implication hit her like ice. That wasn't an accident. No. Her hand trembled over the folder. And my father! Zubairi stared straight at her. He vanished the same night. Her stomach twisted violently. No. He was the last man seen with her before she died. Her world tilted. No, she whispered again. No, my father would never hurt anyone. I know. She blinked. What? His voice softened. I don't believe your father killed her. Adanna stared. Then why all this? Why blame him? Because he disappeared with her evidence. His eyes burned into hers, and for 20 years no one has known where it went. Her breath caught. Suddenly everything clicked. The marriage, the manipulation, the investigation. You think my father hid the evidence? I know he did. Her voice trembled. And you think he still has it? Zuberi stepped closer. Yes. Silence swallowed the room. Then Adanna whispered, "Why didn't you just ask him?" Pain flashed across his face. Because the last time I approached him, his voice dropped. He ran. She froze. What? He saw me years ago, recognized me instantly, and fled before I could speak. Adanna stared at him, stunned. Her father had known who Zuberi was, known he survived, and hid anyway. Why would he do that? She whispered. Zuberi's voice turned grim. Because either your father has spent 20 years protecting the truth, he stepped even closer, or protecting the people who murdered my mother. The words slammed into her chest. Her father, her kind, honest, loving father, the man who taught her right from wrong, either hero or accomplice. Her knees nearly gave out. Zuberi caught her instantly before she fell. His hands gripped her arms, steady and warm. She looked up at him, shattered. I don't know what to believe anymore. His voice dropped softer than she had ever heard. Neither do I. For one suspended second, they simply stood there, breathing, close enough to feel each other's warmth, close enough that all the anger between them suddenly felt fragile. And then the door upstairs slammed open. Both froze. Voices shouted overhead. Then a servant screamed. Sir, come quickly. Zuberi released her immediately and ran. They raced upstairs and found the entire mansion in chaos. A maid stood sobbing in the foyer. What happened? She pointed toward the study, shaking violently. The West office, someone broke in. Zuberi stormed toward the room. The door hung open. Inside, everything was destroyed. Files scattered, drawers ripped apart, glass shattered. And across the desk, written in red paint like blood, were 6 words. Stop digging or the girl dies next. Adanna's entire body went cold, because suddenly this was no longer about old secrets. Someone was watching, and now someone wanted her dead. The room seemed to tilt beneath Adanna's feet. She stared at the message painted across the ruined desk, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. Stop digging or the girl dies next. Not someone, not your wife, not leave this alone. The girl, as if whoever wrote it did not even see her as human. Only leverage, only weakness, only a target. Her throat tightened so sharply she could barely breathe. Everyone out! Zuberi ordered. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Every servant fled instantly. Within seconds the room emptied until only the 2 of them remained standing amid shattered glass and torn papers. Zuberi stared at the red message without blinking. Adanna could see something changing in him. Not fear, not panic. Something darker, something colder. The kind of fury that froze instead of burned. He slowly turned to her. Pack a bag. Her voice cracked. What? You're leaving tonight? Her heart jolted. Leaving where? To one of my secured properties outside the city. No. His eyes narrowed instantly. This is not a discussion. I said no, she snapped. I am not hiding in some secret house while you keep making decisions for me. You are being threatened because of me, and I'm in danger because of secrets you still haven't fully told me. His jaw flexed. Adanna. No! She stepped toward him, trembling with fury and fear. You dragged me into this. You manipulated me into this marriage. You used my father, my desperation, my entire life. So stop ordering me around like I'm some helpless thing you can move from room to room. For one long second they stood chest to chest, both breathing hard. Then Zuberi's voice dropped lower. You think I'm trying to control you because I enjoy it? He asked. Do you have any idea what men like this do when threatened? His eyes burned with something rawer than anger now. Do you know what I saw after my mother died? Adanna froze. He stepped closer. They made me identify her body at 13 years old. His voice shook, not loudly, but enough. I stood over my mother while her blood still stained her hair, and listened to men in suits call it an accident. The words hit her like a physical blow. His gaze stayed locked on hers. So forgive me if I refuse to gamble with your life when I know exactly how far monsters will go. Silence. Every ounce of fight drained from her, because suddenly she saw it. Not the heir, not the strategist, not the cold manipulator, but the boy buried in Sid the man, the boy who had watched his mother die and never recovered. Her voice softened. Zuberi. He looked away immediately, jaw tight, as if ashamed he had let her see even that much. Then he said more quietly, Please, just this once. Trust me. Something in the way he said it made her chest ache. She nodded slowly. Okay. An hour later, they were gone. The black SUV sped through dark roads outside the city, flanked by 2 escort vehicles. Security men sat armed in front and behind them. Adanna had never seen this level of protection outside movies. It terrified her more than the threat itself. The safe house turned out to be a massive private estate, hidden behind thick gates in the hills, surrounded by forest and guarded by armed men at every entrance. This is insane, she whispered. Zuberi stepped beside her. This is necessary. He led her inside. Unlike the mansion, this house felt less grand and more private. Modern, quiet, built for safety rather than display. Still beautiful, still expensive, but somehow lonelier. You'll stay here until I know who sent the threat, he said. And how long will that take? His expression darkened. As long as it takes. Her stomach dropped. The next 2 days crawled by. Adanna hated the silence, hated the waiting, hated feeling trapped behind walls while danger moved unseen outside. Zuberi came and went, constantly buried in phone calls, meetings, security updates. But every night he returned, and every night he checked on her first. Did you eat? Are you sleeping? Did anyone upset you? Always the same questions, always in that calm voice pretending not to care too much. And little by little, against her will, Adanna saw things she had missed before. He never raised his voice to staff, never treated servants cruelly, never ate before ensuring everyone else at the table had food. He worked until exhaustion without complaint, and sometimes when he thought no one watched, he looked tired in a way that made him seem older than his years, like a man carrying too much weight alone. One evening she found him asleep in his office chair, head tilted back, tie loosened, files spread everywhere. She stood in the doorway quietly. He looked younger asleep, softer, almost peaceful. Then her eyes dropped to the open file on his desk. Her father's name. Her heart pounded. She stepped closer slowly. Inside the folder were investigation notes, photographs, maps, handwritten timelines, and at the center of everything a page marked, Final Person of Interest, Obinna Nwachukwu. Beneath it, one sentence was circled heavily in black ink. Only he knows where the evidence is hidden. Her stomach twisted. Even now, even after everything, Zuberi still saw her father as the final key, still suspected him, still had not let go. The floor creaked beneath her. Zuberi woke instantly. His eyes sharpened. You shouldn't read that. Adanna turned slowly, hurt flashing across her face. You still don't trust him. His expression hardened again. I trust facts. He is my father, and my mother is dead. The room fell silent. Both froze. The words hung between them like broken glass. Adanna stared. His breathing grew ragged, then quieter, lower, more vulnerable. I'm sorry, he said. That surprised her more than shouting would have. He stood slowly. Adanna. His voice dropped. I want to believe your father is innocent. More than you know. His eyes met hers. But if he has hidden the truth all these years while murderers walked free, then innocent is not the word for that. Her eyes filled. You don't understand him. Then help me. She blinked. What? He stepped closer. Help me understand why a good man would hide justice for 20 years. She opened her mouth, then closed it, because she had no answer. None. And that terrified her most of all. The next morning her phone rang. Hospital. Her blood turned cold. She answered instantly. Hello? A nurse's frantic voice came through. Miss Adanna, you need to come immediately. Your father is awake and demanding to see you. He says he remembers everything. Her heart nearly stopped. What? He says he's ready to tell the truth. She bolted upright. Zuberi was already moving before she even spoke. We leave now. They arrived at the hospital within 15 minutes. Adanna practically sprinted down the hallway toward her father's room. But when she burst inside, the bed was empty. She froze. No, 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 no. The sheets were torn, machines unplugged, the IV stand knocked over. A nurse lay unconscious on the floor. Adanna screamed. Zuberi rushed in behind her, eyes widening instantly. What happened? The nurse groaned weakly. They took him. Adanna's soul dropped out of her body. What? Who took him? The nurse pointed shakily toward the window. Masked men? They said if he talks, everyone dies. Adanna's knees buckled. Zuberi caught her. No! She sobbed. No! 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 Papa! Then something caught Zuberi's eye. A folded paper left on the bed. He snatched it up, read it, and his entire face changed. What Adanna cried. What does it say? His voice came out like stone. It says your father wasn't taken. Her tears halted. What? He slowly handed her the note. Her hands trembled as she read, Stop looking for me. I should have told the truth years ago. Don't trust anyone in the family, not even him. Oh, her whole body went cold. She stared at the signature. Her father's handwriting. Real, shaking, terrified. Adanna slowly lifted her head toward Zubri and whispered the words neither of them wanted to hear. My father ran. Her chest tightened violently. Because if her father had fled willingly, if he feared them enough to escape from his own hospital bed, then one horrifying possibility remained. Maybe, just maybe. Zuberi had been right all along. For a long moment, Adanna could not breathe. The letter trembled in her hands so violently the paper crinkled. Her father's handwriting, her father's words. Don't trust anyone in the family, not even him. Her eyes slowly lifted to Zuberi. He stood frozen beside her, jaw-clenched face unreadable. But she saw it. The pain beneath the control. The confirmation of his worst fear. The exhaustion of a man who had spent 20 years chasing ghosts, only to be told the truth was still running. Adanna's voice cracked. You knew. He stared at her. You knew he would run if pressured hard enough. I suspected. You pushed him. Her scream echoed through the room. You kept digging, kept cornering him, kept dragging us deeper until he panicked and disappeared. Zuberi's voice hardened. And if I hadn't, we would still know nothing. My father is gone because of this. No, he snapped. Your father is gone because he is hiding something he should have revealed 20 years ago. The words struck her like a slap. No, she cried. You don't get to talk about him like that, and you don't get to keep pretending he is innocent simply because you love him. Silence exploded between them, both breathing hard, both shaking. Then Adanna whispered, devastated, "You were right." Zuberi froze, her eyes filled with tears. "You were right about one thing from the start." Her voice broke. "You never really married me because you cared. You married me because of him. And now that he's gone—" She laughed bitterly through tears. "What use am I to you anymore?" His entire face changed. "Adanna," she backed away. "No." Pain sharpened her voice. "Don't say my name right now unless you can honestly tell me I was ever more than a means to an end." He opened his mouth and stopped. That hesitation shattered her. She nodded slowly, tears falling now. "Exactly." Then she turned and walked out before he could see her fully break. Back at the safe house, Adanna locked herself in her room. She cried harder than she had in years. Not only for her father, not only from fear, but because deep down, despite all logic, despite every warning sign, some broken part of her had started hoping Zuberi might truly care for her. And hope was crueler than despair when it died. Hours passed before a knock came. She ignored it. Another knock. Adanna. Zuberi's voice, soft, controlled. Still she said nothing. The door opened anyway. He stepped inside slowly. She remained facing the window. "If you came to explain yourself," she whispered, "save it." He closed the door behind him. "I came because you deserve the truth." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Now, yes." Silence. Then he spoke. "When I first found you, yes, I approached because of your father." His voice stayed low. "I would be lying if I claimed otherwise." Pain twisted through her chest, but that changed. Her eyes shut. She didn't turn around. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't lie to make this easier." "I'm not." She finally turned, and what she saw on his face stopped her cold. No mask, no cold control, no calculated calm. Just raw honesty. He stepped closer. "The moment I saw you in that hospital," his voice dropped, "you were exhausted, terrified, still begging strangers to save a man who had nothing left to offer you except love." His eyes stayed on hers, and all I could think was, I had never seen anyone fight so hard for another person. Her breath caught. "I respected you before I knew you," he said quietly, "and I admired you long before I let myself care." Tears burned in her eyes again. "Then why keep hurting me?" Pain crossed his face. "Because I did not know how to protect you without hurting you." The honesty in that answer nearly broke her. He moved closer again. "I have been alone in this war since I was 13. His voice lowered. "Everyone who ever smiled at me wanted something. Everyone who ever stood near me betrayed me eventually." His jaw tightened. "So when I realized I cared what you thought of me—" He swallowed hard. "I didn't know what to do with that." Adanna stared at him, heart pounding painfully. "You should have trusted me." "I know. You should have told me everything." "I know. You should have given me a choice." His voice cracked slightly. "I know." And somehow those two words hurt more than any defense would have, because he meant them. He truly knew. He stepped closer one final time. So close now she could hear his breathing. "If I could redo every part of how this began," his eyes burned into hers, "I would still choose you." Her breath caught. But I would choose you honestly. The room went still. Everything inside her shook. And then, before she could stop herself, she kissed him. Hard, desperate, emotional, as if weeks of anger, fear, confusion, and longing exploded all at once. He froze, just for one stunned second, then kissed her back with equal force. His hands gripped her waist. Hers tangled into his shirt. The kiss deepened instantly, fierce and hungry, and full of everything neither had known how to say. Then suddenly his phone rang. Both jerked apart, breathing hard. Zuberi cursed under his breath, checking the screen. His expression darkened instantly. "What?" he answered. Silence. Then his whole body stiffened. Where another pause. Then colder, "I'm coming now." He hung up. Adanna's pulse raced. What happened? His face had gone pale with fury. "We found your father." Her heart stopped. "What?" "He contacted one of my investigators anonymously." Zuberi grabbed his coat. "He wants to meet." "Alone?" "No, I'm coming." "Absolutely not." "Yes, I am." He glared. "Too dangerous. It's my father." He stared at her, then nodded once. "Fine. Stay beside me and do exactly as I say." The abandoned warehouse sat at the edge of the industrial district, swallowed by darkness. Rain poured from the sky. Security teams surrounded the area. Adanna and Zuberi entered cautiously. Inside, Adanna stood alone, weak, pale, terrified. Papa Adanna ran to him, collapsing into his arms, sobbing. He held her tightly, tears in his own eyes. "My daughter, forgive me." She clung to him. "What is happening? Why did you run?" He looked past her toward Zuberi, and fear filled his face. Not hatred, not guilt. Fear. "Because they're watching," he whispered. Zuberi stepped forward. "Then tell us everything. Now!" Adanna shook violently. "They killed your mother, Zuberi." Silence. Zuberi's entire body went rigid. Adanna's voice trembled. She discovered the laundering, the bribery, the murders. Tears filled his eyes. "She gave me the evidence before she died and told me if anything happened to her, I had to protect it." Adanna gasped. Zuberi's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then where is it?" Adanna swallowed hard. "Hidden." "Where?" Before he could answer, a gunshot exploded. Glass shattered. Adanna screamed. Adanna shrieked. Chaos erupted instantly. "Down!" Zuberi roared. He tackled Adanna to the floor as bullets tore through the warehouse windows. Security shouted outside. Gunfire erupted everywhere. And then Adanna looked up and saw her father collapse, blood spreading across his chest. "No, Papa!" She crawled to him, sobbing. Adanna coughed, blood trembling violently. His hand grabbed her wrist. Then Zuberi's. His dying voice came out in broken gasps. "The evidence is in the red Bible, beneath Ayanna's grave." His hand went limp. Adanna screamed. Zuberi froze in horror. And in that moment, everything changed. Because now they had the truth, the evidence, and a dead father whose blood proved someone would kill to keep it buried. Rain hammered the warehouse roof like war drums. Adanna's scream echoed through the gunfire as she cradled her father's body, her hands shaking violently against the blood spreading across his shirt. "No. No, Papa. No." Adanna's eyes stared upward, already fading. Gone. Just like that. One breath he had been speaking, the next he was gone forever. The world blurred around her. Gunshots still cracked outside. Men shouted. Zuberi barked orders into his radio. Security rushed through broken windows, weapons drawn. But Adanna heard none of it clearly. Only the sound of her own broken sobs. Only the memory of her father's voice. Only the crushing realization that the last thing he had ever done was die trying to protect the truth. Adanna's strong hands gripped her shoulders. Zuberi! His face was pale with horror, rainwater, and sweat dripping from his brow. We have to move. She shook her head wildly. No, I'm not leaving him. Another bullet shattered metal nearby. Zuberi grabbed her harder. Look at me! She froze. His eyes burned with desperate urgency. If we stay here, he died for nothing. The words pierced straight through her grief. Her chest convulsed. Then, sobbing violently, she let him pull her up. They ran. And behind them, Obinna's body lay still beneath flickering warehouse lights, blood pooling beneath the man who had spent 20 years carrying the weight of secrets too dangerous to tell. The cemetery was empty by the time they arrived. Night had deepened. Rain soaked the earth. Thunder growled overhead like heaven itself was angry. Zuberi's security remained at the perimeter, while he and Adanna ran through rows of gravestones toward the towering marble monument marked Adanna Adeyemi, beloved mother, beloved wife, gone too soon. Adanna's tears blurred her vision. Her father's dying words replayed again and again. The red Bible, beneath Adanna's grave. Zuberi dropped to his knees in the mud and began digging bare-handed near the stone's base. Adanna joined him instantly. Neither cared about the rain, neither cared about the mud ruining their clothes. They clawed desperately through wet earth until his fingers struck something solid. Wood. A hidden box. Both froze. Breathing hard, Zuberi pulled it free, opened it. Inside lay an old red Bible wrapped in plastic. Adanna's heart pounded violently. This is it. Zuberi opened the Bible carefully. Something thick slid from the hollowed-out pages. A sealed envelope. Yellowed with age. Marked in elegant handwriting to be opened only if I die. Zuberi stopped breathing. Because he knew the handwriting instantly. His mother's. His hands shook as he broke the seal. Inside were documents, photographs, account ledgers, wire transfer records, private signatures, contracts, evidence. Enough evidence to destroy an empire. And at the bottom, a handwritten confession from Adanna herself, naming every person involved. Adanna watched Zuberi read, and watched the exact second his soul shattered. His whole body went still. Then his knees buckled. He dropped into the mud, staring at the page face, pale with devastation. What Adanna whispered. What is it? He slowly handed her the final page. Her eyes scanned the names, then stopped. Her breath caught. No. No. Because among the names listed as conspirators was one she recognized instantly. Amara Adeyemi. And another. The silver-haired uncle. And another. Then one final name at the top. The mastermind. The architect behind it all. Chief Emmanuel Adeyemi. Adanna looked up sharply. Your grandfather Zuberi's face was dead white. My grandfather ordered her killed. The words came out hollow. Disbelieving? As if even saying them broke something inside him. Adanna's stomach turned. The founder, the family patriarch, the man everyone still worshipped, the man whose portrait hung in every room. He had ordered his own daughter-in-law murdered. Zuberi stood abruptly trembling, and in his eyes Adanna saw something terrifying. Pure rage. Not cold, not controlled, just rage. We're ending this tonight. The Adeyemi mansion exploded into chaos when they returned. Family members gathered in the grand hall shouting as Zuberi stormed inside with soaked clothes, wild eyes, and security surrounding him. Amara rose from the stairs. What is the meaning of this? Shut up! The roar silenced the entire house. Even Adanna flinched. She had never heard him yell before. Never. He marched into the center of the hall and threw the evidence onto the floor. Photographs scattered, contracts spread, confessions slid across marble. Everyone stared, confused, terrified. Then Chief Emmanuel descended the stairs, slowly, elegant, despite his age. Silver cane tapping softly against marble. His eyes narrowed. "What foolishness is this?" Zuberi turned toward him, and his voice came out low with fury. "You murdered her." Silence. The room froze. Chief Emmanuel stared, then slowly smiled, coldly, cruelly, and Adanna's blood froze, because that smile was not denial, it was acknowledgement. "I wondered when you would find out," the old man said calmly. Gasps erupted. Amara stumbled backward. The entire family looked horrified. "You admit it," Zuberi whispered, stunned. Chief Emmanuel shrugged. She became inconvenient. Adanna felt sick. Zuberi's breathing turned ragged. "She was family. She was weak," the old man snapped. "She threatened everything I built. She was your son's wife. She was disposable." The room erupted in screaming. Amara cried out in shock. Several relatives backed away in horror. But Zuberi just stood there trembling, then stepped forward. "You killed my mother." Chief Emmanuel's voice hardened, "and I would do it again." Silence. Everything stopped, and then Zuberi punched him. Hard. The old man collapsed instantly. Chaos exploded. Security moved. Family screamed. Amara shrieked. Chief Emmanuel coughed on the floor in shock. Zuberi stood over him, breathing like a beast, fists trembling. "You took everything from me," he whispered. "Everything." Police sirens sounded outside. Adanna blinked. What Zuberi didn't turn. I called them on the drive back. Police stormed the mansion moments later. Arrests began instantly. Chief Emmanuel screamed in outrage as officers dragged him away. Amara cried hysterically. The silver-haired uncle tried to flee but was tackled. One by one, the empire collapsed. In one night, the truth devoured them whole. Hours later, silence returned. The mansion felt dead, broken, like a kingdom after war. Adanna found Zuberi standing alone on the balcony outside his room, staring at the sunrise. She approached slowly. He didn't turn. "They're all gone," he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes, my whole life." His voice cracked faintly. "Everything I wanted was revenge." He laughed bitterly. "And now that I have it?" He finally turned. His eyes glistened. "Why does it feel empty?" Adanna's heart broke. She stepped closer. "Because revenge does not heal grief." He stared at her, then whispered, "She's really gone." The vulnerability in his voice destroyed her. She wrapped her arms around him instantly, and for the first time, Zuberi broke. He buried his face into her shoulder and sobbed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a man who had held pain inside for too many years and could no longer contain it. She held him tightly and whispered through her own tears, "You got justice for her." His arms tightened around her. "But I still lost everyone." She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "No," she whispered. His breath caught. And then she said the words his shattered soul needed most. "You still have me." And in that moment, for the first time since they met, Zuberi looked at her, not with strategy, not with caution, not with guarded restraint, but with pure love. Then he kissed her, softly, deeply, not desperate like before, not heated, just honest and healing. Because after everything, after blood and betrayal and death, they had finally chosen each other for real. 3 months later, the Adeyemi Empire no longer looked untouchable. It looked wounded, shaken, changed. Every newspaper in the country carried the same scandal for weeks. Murder, corruption, and family betrayal exposed inside billion-dollar dynasty. Executives were arrested. Assets were frozen. Old allies abandoned the family overnight. Politicians who once smiled beside Chief Emmanuel suddenly claimed they had never trusted him. Investors panicked. Competitors circled like vultures. But through the storm, one name rose above the wreckage. Zuberi Adeyemi, the lost heir who returned. The son who exposed his own bloodline for justice. The man who chose truth over inheritance. And because of that, public opinion shifted. People who had once feared the Adeyemi name began hoping perhaps one decent man had survived inside that rotten empire. Zuberi became chairman within weeks, not because the family supported him, most hated him now, but because there was no one else left strong enough to hold the company together. And despite everything, despite the pain, despite the grief, he did it, because he had inherited power. But he had chosen integrity, and that mattered more. Adanna stood beside him through all of it. Court hearings, press conferences, board meetings, funerals, nightmares. Grief came in waves, neither of them expected. Justice had not magically healed anything. Her father was still gone. His mother was still gone. The truth had won, but truth often arrived too late to save the people who deserved it most. Some nights Adanna woke crying for Obinna. Some nights she found Zuberi sitting alone in darkness, unable to sleep, staring at old photos of his mother. Healing, she learned, was not dramatic. It was quiet, ugly, slow. It came in tears no one saw, in trembling breaths after nightmares, in learning how to keep living after the reason for your pain had already ended. And somehow through all of it they healed together. One bright morning, Adanna stood at her father's grave beneath open blue sky. Fresh flowers rested at the stone. The grave was beautiful now, proper, honorable, not the rushed burial poverty would have forced before. She knelt slowly. Her fingers brushed the carved name. Obinna Nwachukwu, a good man who carried too much alone. Tears filled her eyes instantly. "I'm angry at you, Papa," she whispered softly. Wind stirred the trees. "You should have trusted me enough to tell the truth." Her voice cracked. "You should have trusted yourself enough to stop running." She swallowed hard. "But I understand now." Her tears fell freely. "You were trying to protect me. You were trying to survive. You were trying to carry burdens no one should carry alone." A shadow moved behind her. Zuberi. He approached quietly and stood beside her. She reached for his hand. He took it instantly, and together they stood in silence before the grave. Finally, Zuberi spoke. "I hated him once." Adanna looked up. He stared at the stone. "For years I blamed him for everything." His jaw tightened. "But he spent 20 years living in fear because he tried to protect my mother's final wish." He exhaled slowly. "He was braver than I understood." Adanna squeezed his hand. He was scared. So was I. Their eyes met, and in that moment they both understood something painful. Fear had ruled all of them. Obinna, Zuberi, even Adanna. Fear of loss, fear of betrayal, fear of trusting the wrong people. Fear had stolen years from every one of them. No more. That evening, Zuberi took her to the rooftop garden of the restored mansion. The place looked different now, lighter. Many of the cruel portraits had been removed. Entire wings had been renovated. The oppressive atmosphere was gone. He had changed the house the same way he had changed the company, stripping out rot and rebuilding with honesty. Candles glowed around the rooftop. A dinner table stood waiting. Adanna laughed softly. "What is all this?" Zuberi smiled in that rare, real way that always stole her breath now. "Sit." She obeyed, amused. Dinner passed softly, warmly, full of laughter and quiet conversation. Then, as dessert arrived, Zuberi suddenly stood. Adanna blinked. "What are you doing?" He walked around the table slowly, then stopped beside her, and knelt. Her entire body froze. "No. No way." His eyes softened as he pulled out a small velvet box. "Adanna." Her hands flew to her mouth. His voice trembled slightly, the powerful Zuberi Adeyemi actually nervous. "The first time I married you," he said quietly, "I did it for the wrong reasons." Tears instantly filled her eyes. "You deserved honesty. You deserved choice. You deserved love from the beginning." He opened the box. A ring sparkled inside. "But if you'll allow me one miracle in this life," his voice cracked faintly, "I want to ask properly this time." A tear slid down her cheek. "Will you marry me again?" he whispered. "Not because you must. Not because either of us is desperate." His eyes shone. "But because we choose each other with truth this time, with love." She was crying before he finished, laughing through tears. "Yes," she sobbed. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and stood just as she threw herself into his arms. He caught her instantly laughing breathlessly as she kissed him again and again. And this time, there was no fear between them, no lies, no manipulation, only love, earned, tested, real. 6 months later, they married again. Properly. This time, beneath sunlight instead of shadows. Before friends instead of strangers. Before people who loved them instead of people who watched like vultures. Adanna walked down the aisle, smiling, radiant, glowing with peace instead of fear. And when she reached him, Zuberi whispered against her ear. "You're still trembling." She laughed softly. "Because this time I actually want to marry you." He smirked. "Rude." She grinned. And when they kissed, the crowd erupted into applause. No secrets, no bargains, no lies, only joy. Later that night, as music played and guests danced beneath golden lights, Adanna stepped aside onto the balcony for fresh air. She looked up at the stars and smiled. Her father should have been there. His absence would always hurt. Always. But grief no longer felt like drowning. Now it felt like love with nowhere to go. And maybe that was healing. Zuberi stepped beside her and wrapped an arm around her waist. "You're thinking too hard." She smiled softly. "I'm thinking about how strange life is." "How so?" She leaned into him. "A year ago I was poor, terrified, and about to sell my future to save my father." She looked up at him. "Now I'm married to the most difficult man in Africa." He gasped dramatically. "Difficult?" "The most difficult." He laughed, then kissed her forehead. "And yet you adore me." She smiled. "Unfortunately, yes." His eyes softened. "I love you, Adanna." Her heart still skipped every time he said it. "I love you too." And beneath the stars, surrounded by the ruins of pain they had survived, and the future they had built from it, they stood together not as victims of tragedy, but as proof that even broken beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. True love is not proven when life is easy. It is proven when trust survives betrayal, when kindness survives pain, and when two wounded hearts still choose honesty after learning how much lies can destroy. Sometimes the people we love hide painful truths, not because they wish to hurt us, but because fear convinces them silence is protection. But silence can wound just as deeply as betrayal. The truth may come late. Justice may come after loss. Healing may come slowly. Yet what matters most is that integrity always rises in the end, and those who choose honesty, courage, and love will always stand taller than those who choose power through deception. And if you believe love, truth, and justice still matter in this world, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful emotional stories like this.